Welcome to the modernity of Kuwait City. Came here from Basra, as in my Crossing Borders episode, and it is now the next day. I've been mostly chilling and doing laundry and trying to figure out how to get food during Ramadan. Now I'm gonna go for a little skate around the city and do some exploring at night. Kuwait has a legally enforced Ramadan, unlike multi-religious, multi-confessional Iraq. Though of course Kuwait is, in real terms, multi-religious because of the Catholic Filipinas and the Hindu Indians that are here, among others. But officially, Kuwait is purely Islamic in terms of its legal code, it seems. And so, yeah, I'm gonna go just check out the town. It's bright, it's loud, it's a lot of tall buildings. Everything is well lit, and it is also extremely expensive. So come along with me and check it out. I've had a couple of friends ask me why I'm in Kuwait at all. If it's so incredibly expensive, so small, and by some people's telling, rather boring. It's a dry country. It isn't as hip destination-wise as places like Dubai and Doha. I don't think Kuwait City is, trying to lure the influencer set, let's put it that way. And part of what I've explained is that to get from Iraq to Saudi Arabia, where I hope to go next, you actually have to go through Kuwait, because the land border at Arar, which is basically in the middle of the desert that connects western Iraq, southwestern Iraq, and northeastern Saudi Arabia by road, is closed to civilians. It's closed to pretty much everybody as far as I know. Only during the lockdown was it allowed for cargo to begin to transit, which is basically like produce from Iraq. And so, yeah, that's the very specific reason I'm in Kuwait. But then there's also a more kind of fun personal reason, which is I want to say I've been to every Arabic country in the world at some point, and I've only ever been to the airport here, and I can't really count that. I've been coasting on that whole airport touchdown in like 2010 for way too long. So now I am in the old souk of El Mabarakia. Sorry, I fumbled over that a little bit. And I am looking for a money changer where I can change my Iraqi dinars to a handful of Kuwaiti dinars. And so now I'm just kind of looking around the market here. This is basically old Kuwait City. And it seems pretty cool, actually. It's lively. I don't see any money changers, but I'm going to keep walking around and exploring. The souk here is actually quite large. It's a lot bigger than I expected, at least this modern part of it. And it seems to be overwhelmingly weighted towards the perfume trade, which kind of reminds me of what I mentioned in my Petra episode about the ancient trade routes that made Petra so wealthy with frankincense coming from Arabia Felix / present-day Yemen. I'm not seeing any sign of a money changer. So far it's all clothing, traditional clothing, and perfumes. So I'm gonna keep exploring. Here's a local TV crew doing a bit of a Ramadan interview, it seems to be. So this is Kuwait City nightlife. It's actually a bit more busy than I expected. Kind of like it. Okay, so if you happen to be coming from Iraq, this is the exchange souk. This was not super easy to find. I had to ask 3 different people directions, but hopefully they take my Iraqi dinars without too much hassle. So I have 50,500 Iraqi, and let's see what that gets in Kuwaiti. I'm not expecting much. Okay, that got me 10 Kuwaiti dinars. That's something. I'm not complaining. I cannot pass up a very dated Seinfeld reference in the middle of the souk in Kuwait City. That cracks me up. I wish I was wearing my shirt to match it, my Kramer shirt. I think it's fair to say that for most Americans of my generation, we look at Kuwait, what we know of Kuwait is through the prism of the 1990 invasion by Iraq and the 1991 liberation of Kuwait by the United States and its coalition allies. And so we kind of know it through like military terms and political terms, but I think most Americans, even myself included, don't know much about Kuwait on the ground. And I think for me, part of the reason I've always stayed away before this trip is just because it has this reputation, you know, for the currency being so outrageously expensive. But it actually seems to be a pretty interesting place so far. They definitely like a lot of incredibly bright lights at night, I can tell you that much. And walking around Kuwait City, especially at this time of year, it's mid-April, it's quite pleasant. There's a nice breeze, it's not terribly hot, and it's actually pretty enjoyable to explore. The souk ended up being a lot more than I expected. And yeah, I kind of like being surprised in places like this. It's part of the pleasures of just traveling to begin with. So my next idea is I want to go to the iconic early 1970s Kuwait Towers to film a short with my LED juggling balls. And so I'm going through this forest of light and glass in downtown to try and find them. To say I'm really enjoying checking the city out. You know, after having spent a couple of weeks in Iraq, it is so hard not to get mesmerized by all the modern glitz here, just in terms of a contrast, if nothing else. They certainly do like their funkily lit up buildings here in Kuwait City. Take these tower displays very, very seriously. It is kind of fun to watch, I do have to admit. And I love that just next to these towers, there is a very low-key, very dated Sham Wings office. Now, Sham Wings, if you don't know, is a Syrian airline, and the CHAM is transliterated. That is like a French-style transliteration. Instead of the Anglophone style one would be, which we normally know with calling Syria Asham, would be SHAM. But through 12 years of war and the teetering of the regime at one point, or so we thought, or so we hoped, this little Syrian airline is still around, and they have an office amidst the glitz and glamour of Kuwait City. Alright, I've been walking and skating around for about an hour, and I finally have a sighting of the towers. They are, although considered sort of the visual icon or architectural icon of the city, they're way outside of the real core of downtown. But I see them on the horizon. The Kuwait Towers they're almost like a mirage. Like they'll pop up between buildings in the horizon and then they'll disappear. And I don't have a Kuwaiti SIM card, so I'm just using the Google Maps offline. And it's kind of hard to figure out exactly how to get there. I mean, this looks like a dead end, but it's the most direct line of sight to the towers. I'm just wandering through random dirt parking lots and going down all these back streets. This is turned into a little bit of a mission. There seems like not a super direct, easy way to find the towers. All the streets here are a lot of forks and circles and curves, and it's like everything but a straight line here in Kuwait City, which makes this all the more interesting. And see there, I don't know, the GoPros are probably a bit too wide, but yeah, so you can see the towers between the buildings. I'm gonna get there. I think in the next 10 minutes I'll get there. These things are absolutely monstrous. I'm walking around, I can't figure out how to actually get onto the site. I'm just walking around this perimeter, which is in a McDonald's parking lot. But they are absolutely huge. This was a super fun little mission. I didn't get too crazy with the juggling just because I knew I was breaking the rules while being there, and I figured they were going to kick me out at any moment, so I kind of needed a sure thing. But yeah, this was actually super fun. Kind of wish I'd gotten there earlier so I could go up in the towers, but I heard the famous YouTubers said that the view isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and it's like $10 entry to go in the towers and whatnot. Now I have to figure out how the hell to get back to the city center. It's turning into a really fun, spontaneous night. Kuwait is definitely a challenging place to travel, especially for, number one, the budget traveler, and number two, the budget traveler during Ramadan. So Ramadan here, as a lot of guest workers have informed me, is actually enforced by law by the local police here in Kuwait City. So you can actually get interrogated or theoretically fined, although I don't know. I don't know how that would happen. But I mean, as a foreigner is here for 2 days, are they really going to issue you a ticket? Maybe they will. I don't know. The migrant workers are definitely very afraid of the authorities here. That's definitely been instilled in them as sort of a cultural norm in the Great Migration from South and Southeast Asia to work here in the GCC countries. But anyway, so here you can see this is how I'm doing my laundry. I'm washing everything in the sink, and then it's about 90 degrees Fahrenheit here, which is like, I don't know, what is that, 33 C or something like that. So I'm just drying everything in the window, and then there is a Starbucks around the corner, and you can get food to go only, and you have to eat it in your hotel room. Like, I can't even eat this in the lobby of the hotel. It can't be in view of any other people. And everyone I've interacted with here, I've said, you know, like, I've just come from Iraq, where, you know, for 2 weeks, and Iraq, things are so much more laid back. Like in Baghdad or Basra, you could, like, if need be, I mean, I was actually trying to fast most of the time I was there, not for obviously religious reasons, but primarily for health reasons. But you could still sneak a falafel in Iraq, and you would see Iraqis doing that. Of course, Iraq has an indigenous Christian minority, and Iraq has other minority religions, such as the Mandeans and the Shabak and Kakai and other peoples. But yeah, definitely. And the Starbucks here only opened at 4 p.m. and they were adamant that they have to staple the food shut, and I can't even pop the straw in the cup. Like, everything has to come back to the hotel sealed. So just a little note, but I'm still glad I came to Kuwait. I find it, I mean, it's weird here, but it's super interesting, and the city's kind of cool. It's just it's not an easy place, you know. It was so, and also the name of the hotel, if anybody's interested, I'm staying at, is called the Carlton Tower Hotel, and it's between 50 and 60 US dollars a night, and I think this is probably the best deal in Kuwait City. And the staff here are really friendly. There's nothing fancy. There are no amenities here. There's no swimming pool or anything like that, but who needs that? I mean, you don't come to Kuwait to go to a swimming pool anyway. part of what the communications tower signifies, at least to me, is it's kind of like the beginning of the end of the status quo in Iraq as it had been known since the Ba'ath Party firmly took power in 1968. Because it was Saddam Hussein ordering the invasion and occupation of Kuwait, including installing a puppet government here, that was really his undoing. See, 10 years before, when Iraq had invaded Iran, the Americans were at best indifferent, and at worst actually aiding the Iraqis in their war with Iran, because the United States, of course, after the hostage crisis and America's being kicked out of Iran after its Islamic Revolution in 1979, the US had no interest in not only Iran winning the war, but I think the United States at the time, especially under the administration of then US Republican President Ronald Reagan and his Vice President George H.W. Bush, wanted to see Iran kind of cut off at the kneecaps. And so that war was allowed to fester for 8 long years. But when Iraq invaded Kuwait, which was a monarchy friendly to the United States and also an oil supplier that the United States saw as an ally in the region, and definitely, you know, in American interest, that was a proverbial and literal line in the sand that had been crossed by the Iraqi military. And within 7 months, the American military and its allies, some of whom were actually other Arab armies, including Syria, which is a weird thing to think about today, came here to Kuwait City to liberate it. And this gigantic tower, which looks like something out of a Jetsons cartoon, you can almost imagine a, you know, George Jetson parking at a spaceport up there. But yeah, that's why this is called Liberation Tower, and yeah, it's been 30 years since it was completed, and I think it's I don't know, to me it's kind of an interesting story, and it tells you something about the history of little Kuwait and its monarchy and how much it has depended on the United States for its security. And lastly, I would just add that 12 years later, when the son of George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, decided to once and for all, with his neoconservative allies, overthrow the presidency of Saddam Hussein and basically erase the Ba'ath Party from dominating Iraqi politics, it was actually the Al-Sabah dynasty here that enabled this. So American troops crossed from Kuwait into Basra Governorate on their way to overthrowing the regime in Iraq, which took about 21 days in total. So that kind of all began here. So basically, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in the summer of 1990 on one very hot night was a long and winding beginning of Saddam Hussein's downfall. It's quite hot here, and it is essentially obligatory fasting during Ramadan, although I believe Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan, is tomorrow. And I am looking for the street of exchanges that I went to the other night when I first got here to exchange my Iraqi dinars. And I'm trying to navigate something during the daytime. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you find something at night and you know where it is by how things are lit at night, and then when you see the same place during the daytime, you can't remember exactly how you found the place you're trying to look for. Nearly all of the exchanges in the exchange quarter of the Mubarakia Souk seem to be closed, but this one guy here is open. Okay, getting some Saudi Riyals. Here we go. Shukran jazilan. Okay, now I got my Saudi Riyals. Now I've got to walk back to the hotel and call a Kareem taxi to the border. I have to say it's been an interesting couple of days here in Kuwait City, and in the end I'm really glad I came here. I also didn't really have a choice in the overland journey that I'm attempting to do from Amman, Jordan to Dubai, UAE, with the Iraq-Saudi border being closed to human beings. I think my only regret is that I didn't really meet or interact with any Kuwaitis here. Most of the people I met were Bangladeshi and Nepali and Egyptian, which is of course to be expected for the Gulf. And I think, you know, Kuwait pioneered this system, which is known as, in Arabic, as it's An-Nizam al-Kafala. The Kafala system is the migrant worker visa regime that is in place all over the GCC, and is even mirrored in Iraq. I mean, in Basra, there were Bangladeshi men cleaning the new mall that my friends took me to. So it's even, you know, the migrant worker system is even being emulated in Iraq as it seeks to rebuild. But I'm definitely glad I came here, and yeah, I think it was definitely interesting. I didn't get to do much because of Ramadan, so it was a bit uneventful, but I still really enjoyed myself, and I would recommend Kuwait for a couple of days.